I was recently asked about my whereabouts leading up to the events of November the 22nd, 1963. And today, I will indeed answer that very important question. My name is Alfred, and you are joining me in the Book Cave. Yes, everyone, it is yet another tag video. And specifically, this is the JFK Book Tag. And I was tagged by fellow booktuber, the inimitable and irascible and very interesting Steve Donoghue, who I will link below. He tagged me in the JFK Book Tag that was originally created by very literary Kari, who I hope I pronounced her name correctly, but I will tag the original video down below as well so that we can continue to enjoy this very interesting and unique bit of BookTube. Really enjoy it, and I'm very excited to do this, so happy that I was tagged. In any event, with glasses perched atop my head so that I can read the material before me, here are the questions of the JFK Book Tag. Number 1 is Tenuvus and One More. Rose and Joe Sr. had a boat called Tenuvus to signify the 10 members of the Kennedy clan. With the birth of Ted, the family named another boat One More. What book with a large cast of characters would you recommend? Now, this was an easy one. A lot of the questions are fairly easy to answer, but this one in particular, because a dear friend of mine, as I mentioned in an earlier video, has written a space opera that does indeed include a great cast of characters. And I will recommend the first book of that space opera, The Crew of Ganges by David Gullotta. There is an incredible amount of characters within this book and the subsequent books in the trilogy. It's just exciting. It's an exciting space opera. It has a huge cast of characters that are fairly easy to remember even throughout their various arcs, and just a rollicking good time. But David did a fantastic job writing a huge cast. They're easy to take in stride and to remember who's who, so there you go. Crew of Ganges by David Gullotta. Question number 2, PT 109. What is your favorite book featuring a harrowing survival, rescue, or war story? Well, this is not my primary answer, but I can't answer this question appropriately without bringing up Andy Weir's The Martian. This is obviously a space science fiction taking place on Mars. It's about an astronaut that gets stuck on Mars and has to survive. Everybody's heard of it. There's a film, very entertaining, decent amount of science fact within this novel itself. Read it in about 2 sittings for me, which is pretty good. Quite a while ago, but it was usurped as a favorite in a survival tale. And if you stick around this channel long enough, you will begin to hear about this series ad infinitum, ad nauseum. And that would be the real answer of the question, Sharpe's Trafalgar by Bernard Cornwell. And Richard Sharpe, being the title character of this novel and of the Sharpe series of Napoleonic war fiction, he gets stuck in the Battle of Trafalgar, himself on the same ship as the Admiral Horatio Lord Nelson, as the battle in October of 1805 hits fever pitch. How an infantryman, a rifleman in the King's Army, found himself there is an interesting story in and of itself, and I highly, highly recommend reading Sharpe in general, but in particular, Sharpe's Trafalgar. It's got a naval angle to it, PT 109, ships get screwed. Read it. It's exciting. Question number 3. Addison's Disease. What is your favorite book that deals with disease or the medical field? Now, this could also have been an answer for question 1, but I couldn't resist keeping this here for Addison's Disease, and I read it at the beginning of this year for the first time, and this has to go to The Stand. In case you didn't already know, it's about a pandemic, Captain Trips. There is a vast amount of characters that are intriguing. They're more than three-dimensional in some cases. Some of them are here for a bit and then they're gone, but you fall in love with some of these characters through their plight, and I mean just seeing a pandemic go out of control and what happens afterwards. It could even be a tale of survival. But I highly recommend that any good fan of horror, of thriller, of the human condition read The Stand, and that is why I'm going to keep it there for Addison's Disease in particular, because of Captain Trips. Moving right along to question number 4, Camelot. What real or imagined dynasty would you like to read more about? Now, I'm assuming that when this question was made, we're thinking more of royal dynasties, or maybe even other political dynasties, which I hope we really don't have any more of that within this country, even though I know we do. But going forward, I digress. I went a little differently. What I'm really interested in is feudal Japan, and my dynasty is going to be the Tokugawa shogunate. It's also known as the Edo shogunate, and it spanned over 200 years. We're talking from approximately 1600 or 1603, within that realm, to about 1868. So we're talking the age of the Puritans in North America all the way to post-Lincoln assassination. That is a big smattering of time. The Tokugawa shogunate began under the reign of the first Go-Yosei emperor in 1600, and the final dynastic empire in Japan or rather above the Tokugawa shogunate would be the Meiji dynasty, where we then saw historically the Meiji Restoration or Reformation or Revolution, depending upon the historian in question, where we see a vast change in Japanese culture and politics at the time. If you want me to get more specific, I'm very interested at the very beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate and the very end of the Tokugawa shogunate, specifically with, I believe his name is Tokugawa, and I'm going to fight with the pronunciation for a moment, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who was the first shogun of the Edo shogunate, going from 1603 to 1616. So, vast amount of time, 200-year plus span of Japanese history, multiple dynasties, but really under that singular Tokugawa shogunate. That is something I would like to learn much, much more about. An interesting time period that I only know bits and smatterings here and there. Question number 5, High Hopes. Frank Sinatra re-recorded this song for Kennedy's 1960 presidential campaign. If you ran for office, what would your campaign song be? I love that campaign song that Sinatra wrote for Kennedy. Originally, I think it was about a grasshopper, but and you can find it anywhere you want here. Both versions. I do like the Kennedy version. You know, he's got high hopes, high apple pie in the sky hopes. Very American. But for me, if I was running for office, I would like to think that my campaign would be more local, more grassroots. My name is Alfred, so why not go for Paul Simon's "You Can Call Me Al. I'm one of the people. Let me serve you and have some good time along the way." I think that'd be a lot of fun, but needless to say, I don't think I'll ever be running for public office, and if I do, hold on to your butts. Question number 6. We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Name the last book you read that was set in space. For me, this was the bizarre and philosophical and somewhat strangely sexy Chapter House Dune by Frank Herbert, the conclusion to the Dune saga. It has been a number of years for me since I started reading the full Dune series, and I'm happy to conclude it, even though I know it was not Frank Herbert's chosen conclusion, as that was the final book that he published before his death about a year later. It does take place in space, so that's why it's the answer to the question. And I highly recommend you don't just stop at Dune, but continue through the sequels to really see what Mr. Herbert's philosophy and really whole cohesive story was. And we'll leave it at that because this is a tag and not a review. Number 7, coconut. The coconut shell JFK carved a rescue message on during the PT-109 incident was encased in plastic and used as a paperweight in the Oval Office. Do you have any neat desk items or mementos? Why, yes. Yes, I do. I probably have far too many desk items and mementos spread throughout my space, some of which you can see behind me. But the first sort of memento or desk item I'm going to show you is actually something you see in the beginning of this video. I'm a big fan of Pops, and I was so excited to find these examples. There's JFK himself and Jackie Kennedy, both of them. Here they are in wonderful, wonderful garb. What can I say? I'm a New England person. Kennedy family was a big deal, and I couldn't resist those two Pops. And again, they are made note of within the opening of this video. Another sort of a local thing is this beauty right here. This is a model of, not one that was built, but one that was purchased as is, of Old Ironsides, USS Constitution. If you find yourself in Boston, I highly recommend taking a trip over to see the ship that could not be sunk, the truly unsinkable ship, this Constitution. And something that's very special to me, I have a couple of these die-cast models. This is the State Highway Patrol car for Ohio. I want to say that this was a model that was used in the 60s, although I'm not really sure. I'm not terribly good at identifying that, but this belonged to my grandfather. When he was traveling around the country with my grandmother, he would pick up little knickknacks like this and collect them, and I was able to have some of my possession after he departed this life. And probably my favorite thing was a find. We'll try and do this without toppling anything behind me, although that'll do. Bookends. Railway bookends. Yes, this is real train rail that was decommissioned and turned into bookends. I don't know when. Real railway spike, which I think is dated. Couldn't tell you when. But very unique curio item I found in an antique store and couldn't resist. But don't drop this on your foot. Moving steadily along. Question number 8. Scandal. What personal or political scandal would you like to read more about? I'm actually going to give you a list of 3 that I think everybody should know more about. But in particular for me is the XYZ affair, which happened under the John Adams administration, specifically 1797 to 1800. The initial event was that apparently President John Adams, in recognizing some tensions that the U.S. government had with France at the time, sent 3 diplomats over to France. That was just an amazing gaffe that took place, resulting in what is referred to as a quasi-war, which is why the period spans to 1797 to 1800. And my personal theory is that perhaps that choice may have led to the War of 1812, in that the United States may not have been looked favorably upon by the French and did not have the backing at the time. But I don't know, which is why I would like to learn more about it. The second one is going to be Watergate. Yes, everybody hears about different types of Deflategate, Everything's a gate. Sugar gate. If somebody empties a sugar bowl without filling it. Coffee gate. Oh, the coffee's broken. Who broke it? Coffee machine's broken. But Watergate, yes, okay, it involves Nixon. Yes, there was a break-in at the Democratic National Convention's offices, or the Democratic National Committee's offices, in 1972, specifically June 17th, 1972. As you can see, I'm not even good on the dates. I don't know that much about it. And it spanned the rest of Nixon's administration from 1972 to 1974, resulting in his resignation from the highest office in the land. So, I would like to know more about that in a much more cohesive sense than I already do. And finally, and this is going to make some people angry, or, well, in any event, the January 6th insurrection. Yes, I'm talking about the 2020 January 6th insurrection, in which the holder of the highest office in our land may or may not have been party to a militarized, traitorous event. So I don't think the dust has settled enough for us to have an accurate account of that. All of that is alleged, but it would be interesting to see that from the lens of not just a sociological point of view, but from the lens of clear hindsight and historicity, as it were. Continuing right along. Number 9. Peace Corps. JFK was the founder of the Peace Corps, or his actions led to the founding of the Peace Corps. What book made you a better person? Now, this took me a minute. I was thinking about all the nonfiction that I had read over the years, and when it comes down to something that may be better, I went away from nonfiction and thought about fiction. I think reading in general makes you better, but specifically, I'm going to have to go with the Tales of the City series by Armistead Maupin. This is the final book in the series, unless, of course, the author decides to write some more. This particular volume is The Days of Anna Madrigal. The reason why it made me a better person was that it allowed me to look at the lens of an entirely different culture within my own country, within my own society, that of the LGBTQ plus community on many different levels. It also makes one realize that everybody, deserves love. Everybody deserves a connection. Everybody deserves friendship. It also shows the importance of found family, which has become something that is incredibly important in my life. And I can really thank Mr. Maupin for his tales and, yes, helping to make me a better person. Question number 10 is conspiracy? Question mark. What are your thoughts on the Kennedy assassination? Well, let me first answer the question that Mr. Donoghue so boldly asked of me, wondering where I was in the week or weeks leading up to the assassination itself. Yes, I am a timeless individual. And I was actually taking a meeting with none other than J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI at the time. Mr. Hoover was a bit perturbed by actions that had been taken re-Cuba, and was curious as to what the defense, or rather what the Department of Justice was dealing with when it came to organized crime. He mentioned his displeasure in those meetings, and I, of course, tried to placate him, but we all know how things ended up. But in reality, my personal opinion is this. I am not as well read in the subject of the JFK assassination as I would like to be. I remember the first time that I really truly learned about the assassination was at the JFK Library here in Massachusetts. When you go through the library, and I highly recommend that you do visit this presidential library for the number of tangible artifacts you can encounter, including RFK, or at least a replica of RFK's desk when he was Attorney General. You can see the coconut that was used as the paperweight in the earlier question, the Kennedy family Bible. You occasionally will see clothes worn by Jackie Kennedy while she was in the White House creating Camelot, campaign memorabilia, etc., etc., ad nauseum, ad infinitum. Highly valuable experience to have if you are a student of American politics or American history, either way. But as you go through the museum and you see everything that is there to see, the final room is a hallway of black with small screens showing black and white footage of the live report that Walter Cronkite gave that fateful day on November 22nd, 1963. And I still cannot go into that room. I visited the library many times, always finding something new to learn or rediscover. And that room is a truly gut-wrenching experience. Whoever designed that particular exhibit was worth every single penny that was paid to them. I can tell you that. But in practical terms, it is unfortunate, but my very, very staunch skeptical side of things says that Lee Harvey Oswald acted in a way that was a result of, what is the word we're looking for here? It was the result of indoctrination, extremism, becoming a fanatic in some ways of perhaps the Soviet cause. There were rumors that he had some back training. That's not really grounded, but he worked, in other words, I do believe that he worked alone that specific day. I also believe it was possible that there were other players on the field that may or may not have been aware of each other, but that's all conjecture. So unfortunately, yes, the lone gunman is as it is. What intrigues me is the events leading up to Oswald's actions and his subsequent murder at the Hancock Ruby, who had connections to organized crime. Now, RFK, of course, was trying to cut the head off of organized crime in the early 60s. And he made very mad somebody in particular called Salvatore Sal Trafficante Jr., who was the mob boss of the Miami families with connections business-wise in Cuba, sort of taking over from the operation that Meyer Lansky and his associates were involved in before the communist revolution there. So politically a minefield for him. Of course, he was taken in a special committee to interrogate him post-assassination. And I do believe that there was a connection between the warring factions within the Department of Justice and the FBI and those that were not too happy with the way things in Cuba went down, contacted the mob. There may have been a plot there as well. Again, a lot of this is conjecture that doesn't really have solid evidence, but there's a bit of anecdotal evidence, apparently, about Salvatore Trafficante, that when he was dining in a diner or some sort of restaurant in Miami with an associate, that Jack Kennedy was killed at that time. All of a sudden, the entire room went silent, as one would. It's such a tremendous event. And it was rumored that Trafficante said, okay, just what I expected. Something along those lines. He just continued to eat like he was king of the world. So with anecdotal evidence like that, and, that sort of entertainment angle of things, I think there should be something to be explored there. But in practical terms, well, look at the facts. What is the most obvious path? We're thinking of Occam's razor here. What are the consistent grains of truth throughout every opinion and theory? Do conspiracy theories exist? I believe they do. 95 to 98% of them are absolute bunk. And with that, ladies, gentlemen, and friends, thank you for watching my JFK book tag, and a big thank you to Mr. Steve Donoghue for tagging me in this. It was loads of fun, and I will see everyone at the next one. Thanks for watching.